I was on an overnight bus heading home after a long trip. It wasn't my first time taking this route, and I liked traveling at night. It was cheaper, quieter, and usually uneventful. The bus was one of those standard long-distance ones. A little worn down but comfortable enough. The kind that made occasional stops but mostly stuck to the open highway for hours at a time. There were maybe 20 of us on board. A mix of travelers, some asleep, some staring at their phones, some just watching the darkness outside. The driver was a quiet man, focused on the road, and there was an older guy sitting in the front row, probably there to help collect fares. Everything felt normal, until we saw the first bus. It was on the side of the road, hazards flashing, tilted slightly off the pavement. As we passed, I could see people standing outside, huddled in small groups. Some had their hands on their heads. Others just stood there frozen. Something wasn't right. I wasn't the only one who noticed. A few people sat up straighter, eyes shifting toward the windows. The bus kept moving, the sight disappearing behind us, but an uneasiness settled in. Then, about 10 minutes later, we saw another one. Same thing. A bus pulled over, hazards blinking, passengers standing around in the dark. This time, I saw someone waving their arms as if trying to signal us. But our driver didn't slow down. If anything, he sped up. That's when the murmurs started. People whispering, glancing at each other. No one knew what was going on, but it wasn't hard to put the pieces together. 2 buses, same situation, same eerie scene. It wasn't a coincidence. A woman a few rows ahead of me was scrolling through her phone, refreshing a news feed, her face growing more tense by the second. She turned to the person beside her, whispering something. I couldn't hear what she said, but I could see the reaction. Eyes widening, shoulders tensing. Something was happening out there. And then the bus slowed down. I snapped my attention back to the front. The driver was stepping on the brakes, his eyes locked on the road ahead. I leaned forward slightly, trying to see what he saw. Then I spotted them. Up ahead, barely visible in the dim glow of the headlights, a group of men stood across the highway. There were 5 of them, maybe 6, all dressed in dark clothing, their faces obscured by masks. A black SUV was parked to the side, angled in a way that made it clear this wasn't some random breakdown. They were blocking the road. The driver hesitated, but we all knew there was no real choice. We couldn't plow through them. There was nowhere to turn. The bus rolled to a stop. For a second, no one moved. No one spoke. It was that heavy, suffocating silence that only comes when everyone knows something terrible is about to happen. Then they started moving toward us. One of them pulled something from his waistband. A gun. Another had a machete glinting under the headlights. The others carried smaller weapons, clubs, metal pipes, things they could use to hurt people without hesitation. People inside the bus were panicking now. I heard someone whispering frantically, another person muttering a prayer under their breath. A man near the front tried to reach for his phone, but the older guy, the one helping the driver, shook his head sharply. No calls, no sudden movements. The first man reached the door and banged against it, hard. The driver didn't move, didn't open it, but we all knew it wouldn't matter. A second later, the sound of shattering glass filled the air. Someone had smashed a side window near the back. A woman shrieked, scrambling away from the broken glass. The man outside reached through, unlocking the emergency exit. Within seconds, 2 of them were inside. Chaos erupted. One of them stalked down the aisle, waving the machete, yelling at everyone to stay put. Another moved toward the front, shoving the driver back against his seat. A bag was thrown to the ground. We knew what they wanted. One by one, people started emptying their pockets, tossing wallets and phones into the bag. Some hesitated, but a quick threat, a gun pointed, a machete raised, was all it took to break them. The woman with the phone from earlier clutched it tightly, reluctant to give it up. The man with the machete slammed his blade into the seat beside her, and she let go instantly. I did the same, reached into my pocket, pulled out my wallet and phone, and dropped them in. It wasn't about the money. It was about getting out of this alive. The men worked quickly, methodically. as if they'd done this 100 times before. But then something changed. One of the passengers, a man sitting near the middle, shifted slightly, just enough to draw attention. Maybe he was nervous. Maybe he was thinking about running. One of the robbers noticed. Without hesitation, he grabbed the man by the collar and yanked him into the aisle. The man barely had time to react before a gun was pressed against his head. The bus fell dead silent. No one moved. No one breathed. For a moment, I thought I was about to watch someone die. But then, from outside, the sharp sound of an engine revving cut through the night. The men froze. One of them turned, looking toward the SUV. A moment later, headlights appeared in the distance, far, but getting closer. Another vehicle. Their window of time was closing. The man with the gun hesitated, then shoved the terrified passenger back into his seat. Another barked something at the others, and just like that, they were moving. They grabbed the bag, the stolen phones and wallets inside, and bolted toward the exit. Within seconds, they were gone. The bus remained still. The only sound was the heavy, uneven breathing of the passengers. No one dared to move until the black SUV peeled away, disappearing into the night. Then, finally, the driver exhaled and restarted the engine. We drove in silence. No one spoke. No one checked on each other. There was nothing to say. When we reached the next town, a few of the passengers went straight to the police station. I was one of them. We gave descriptions, reported what happened. But deep down, we knew how it would go. They would be long gone, and they'd do it again. I was driving home from a friend's wedding, exhausted, but wired on too much caffeine. It was past midnight, and I was on Highway 17, a long empty stretch cutting through the countryside. It's one of those highways where you can go miles without seeing another car. I liked it for that reason, less traffic, no distractions. But that night, I would have given anything for a few more cars around. I had about 2 hours left before I got home. My phone was at 12%, and I hadn't charged it. Stupid mistake, but I figured I'd be fine. The gas station I stopped at earlier had sketchy-looking guys hanging outside, so I just filled up my tank and left without buying anything. About an hour into the drive, I noticed headlights in my rearview mirror. At first, I didn't think much of it, that they stayed behind me, never passing, never falling too far back. Just two glowing orbs, trailing me in the darkness. I switched lanes. They switched too. I slowed down a little, and so did they. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe they were just another driver going the same way. I sped up slightly, pushing to 75. The car behind me did the same, never closing the distance, just keeping pace. Then their high beams flashed on. I flinched at the sudden brightness flooding my car. What the hell? I muttered. It stayed like that for a few seconds before the lights turned back to normal. Maybe they were trying to tell me something was wrong with my car. I tapped my brakes a little, not enough to stop, but just enough to let them know I noticed. But they didn't pass me, or signal in any way. Instead, they moved closer. At this point, my stomach was in knots. I knew something was off. I pressed harder on the gas, picking up speed, but the car behind me matched. Then they accelerated fast, too fast. Before I could react, their car swerved into the lane beside me, pulling up right next to me. I turned my head and felt a jolt of fear shoot through me. It was a blacked-out SUV, windows tinted too dark to see inside. Then, they swerved toward my car, forcing me toward the shoulder. I yanked the wheel to the right to avoid being hit, my tires kicking up gravel as I struggled to keep control. The SUV backed off just slightly, but they weren't leaving. I was fully panicking now. My phone was at 5%. No service. Not that I'd have time to call for help anyway. Then I saw it. An exit ramp up ahead. I didn't even think. I veered onto it at the last second, my tires skidding slightly as I made the sharp turn. The SUV had already passed it. They'd have to double back if they wanted to follow. I barely breathed as I sped down the exit ramp, hoping there'd be a gas station, a hotel, anything where I could stop. But the second my car hit the bottom of the ramp, my heart sank. It was a deserted road. No lights, no businesses, just trees and silence. And then, headlights appeared at the top of the ramp. They had doubled back. I floored it. My car wasn't built for racing, but I pushed it as fast as it would go. The SUV was behind me again, gaining quickly. They weren't done. Up ahead, I saw another road, a turn that led back to the main highway. If I could just get there, maybe I'd find another car, a truck, anything. Then the SUV swerved again, this time cutting in front of me. I slammed my brakes, tires screeching as I came to a shaking stop. The SUV blocked the road completely. The driver's door opened. I didn't stay to find out what they wanted. I threw my car into reverse, spinning my wheel to turn myself around. My tires screeched against the asphalt as I sped back the way I came, praying that there was another exit to the highway. The SUV roared behind me, but I didn't look back. Then finally, I saw it, a flickering gas station sign. I tore into the lot, slamming my palm on the horn as I skidded to a stop in front of the store. There were 2 trucks parked outside. People inside. The SUV didn't follow me in. I watched in my mirror as it slowed, paused at the entrance, then backed up and disappeared into the night. I sat in my car, hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My whole body was shaking. I have no idea what they wanted, but I know one thing: if I hadn't taken that exit, if I hadn't found that gas station, I don't think I would have made it home that night. I've always believed in helping people when I can. I grew up in a small town where stopping to help someone with a flat tire wasn't just common. It was expected. So, when I saw a car pulled over on the side of the highway, hazard lights blinking, I didn't think twice before slowing down. It was late, past midnight, and the road was nearly empty. I was driving back home from a weekend trip, trying to push through the last stretch of the drive before exhaustion took over. The car on the shoulder was an older sedan, its hood propped open, steam rising from the engine. A man stood beside it, waving one arm, the other holding a phone. I pulled over a few feet ahead of him, leaving some space between our cars. The moment my tires crunched to a stop on the gravel, something felt off. I couldn't explain it at first. Maybe it was the way he stopped waving the second my car pulled over, or how he stood there, still, waiting, like he expected me to step out first. I hesitated, watching him through my side mirror. He was tall, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. His face was shadowed under the dim glow of the streetlights. I reached for my phone, unlocking it just in case. Then, as I glanced back toward the broken-down car, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The hood wasn't fully open. From where I sat, I could see the latch wasn't unhooked all the way. No one actually trying to fix an engine would leave it like that. It was just for show. That's when I knew. This wasn't a real breakdown. I didn't waste time. I put the car in drive and hit the gas. As soon as my tires spun against the pavement, I saw him move. Not toward his car, toward mine. He lunged forward, reaching for the door handle, but I was already pulling away. My heart pounded as I gripped the wheel, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. At first, I thought I was in the clear. Then his car roared to life. The broken-down sedan that was supposedly overheated. It started up instantly. Headlights flashed in my mirror as he swerved back onto the highway, accelerating fast. I pressed down on the gas, my speed climbing. The road ahead was empty, just a long stretch of dark asphalt. I was going 60, then 70. He kept up. Then, out of nowhere, a loud bang. My whole car jolted forward as he slammed into my rear bumper. My hands tightened on the wheel, trying to keep control. Another hit, harder this time. My tires skidded slightly before I corrected. He was trying to spin me out. Adrenaline flooded my system as I scanned the road ahead. No exits, no gas stations, just trees and open space. I swerved into the left lane, hoping to gain distance, but he followed, matching my speed. Then he pulled up beside me. For the first time, I saw his face clearly. He was grinning, like this was a game to him. He jerked his car toward mine, trying to sideswipe me. I yanked the wheel right, barely dodging in time. I needed an out. Up ahead, I spotted a slight curve in the road. An idea hit me. Risky, but it was my best shot. I waited until we were near the bend. Then at the last second, I slammed my brakes. His car shot past me, the momentum carrying him forward. He tried to correct, but he had been too focused on me. His tires screeched against the pavement. His car veered off the road, smashing through a small barrier and disappearing into the ditch beyond. I didn't wait to see the damage. I floored it, speeding away as fast as I could. My hands were shaking, my chest tight with fear and adrenaline. I didn't stop until I reached a well-lit gas station 20 miles down the road. Even then, I sat in my locked car for nearly an hour, just watching the road, making sure he hadn't followed. I reported what happened, but I never found out who he was. No reports of a crashed car. No arrests.